He calls for Albemarle County Schools to do an internal investigation into how 2 of its teachers ended up facing child sexual abuse charges are expanding beyond the prosecutor's office. You can now add politicians. And that's where Isla Miyabi picks up the story. She's live in studio.
Hey, Steve. Virginia delegates Katrina Carlson, Amy Laufer, and State Senator Cree Deeds are the most recent voices to join the push, along with Congressman John McGuire, all asking the school board to dig deeper into what actually happened. The arrests of 2 former staffers on child sex abuse charges have prompted families to demand answers. Among them is Hollymead parent Phil Reese, asking why moms and dads were not notified sooner.
About 45 days now since Michael Sweeney has been arrested. Trust has been shaken a lot. When you give your kids to the schools, you trust that they're going to be safe.
Delegates Carlson, Laufer, and State Senator Deeds echo those concerns. 3 have written a letter to Albemarle schools saying an independent investigation could help settle lingering questions.
We've just suggested to the school board that they might want to consider an independent investigation to clear the air.
Congressman John McGuire called for a full-scale investigation into how the school system handled both cases on July 9th. The school board has taken some steps of its own, inviting the parents to public listening sessions and passing a new policy aimed at preventing sexual misconduct.
The earlier you can calm the waters, the better.
The school board has not released a statement in response to calls for an independent investigation.
I think if they really want to restore any type of trust in the school system and the school board, they need to do it today.
We will continue to follow this story as the school board decides whether to move forward with an independent investigation. Live in the studio, I'm Isla Miyabi, 29 News at